Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another spotlight on CS Ops, where we are shining lights bright on folks in the customer success operations space and maybe neighboring spaces based on our guests today who are really making a difference. So I'm here in Austin, Texas with my co-host Jean out on the West Coast.
Hey Matthew, good to see you again.
You as well. Great to have you and great to have Robert Delao with us today. He is Director of Renewal and Strategy at Ironclad. And I have known Robert for quite a while, and I am so pleased that he is joining us today to talk all things ops. Robert, welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm super excited, both honored to be here, and I love the fact that you guys are highlighting CS Ops and the work that folks are doing. It's a really great community, and I'm just glad to be part of it.
I think we're all glad to be a part of it most days. Um,
Fair.
I'm gonna say that today, maybe I wasn't as excited to be a part of it for just a little piece of the day. I was like, oh my goodness, come on, I was deep in it. But nevertheless, it's so great to talk to two people like yourself. So maybe you'll raise my spirits, in my opinion, on CS Ops. But so Robert, tell us about yourself. Tell us about some of your journey into CS Ops, and then you have a title that's not necessarily CS Ops. So tell us a little about that too.
Yeah, so I got into CS Ops probably close to 8 years ago. My background before then, I've always been in customer-facing orgs in call centers or um, customer service related fields. And specifically, I was a learning and development manager for some time. I relocated to California and I was lucky enough to be referred into OpenDNS, which is a cybersecurity company. And I started out as a renewal manager. Um, so my first year was kind of, running renewals, chasing dollars, helping to grow our customer base. And I had really great leaders who were willing to listen to me and, where I wanted to grow. And part of that was to get back to my roots in learning and development. And there wasn't a specific role for that, but there was really an opportunity to be the first CS ops person at OpenDNS. And so at that point, I think it was, not a lot of CS ops people or with that specific title, but I was kind of the catch-all for everything. We were running metrics for all of our post-sale teams. We were managing our QBRs and all hands and even scheduling travel and events for our teams so they would be able to get together and do stuff. I was taking notes in leadership meetings. So the span of what somebody could do, it was kind of landing on my plate. And as we kind of like matured, we started to kind of like put some gates and guards around that and really establish the work that we were doing. So that was kind of, my transition into CS Ops. It was really the foot in the door into the tech space. And now, I was able to move back into a renewal operations role for a fast growing startup called Ironclad. I'm really excited to be here. I've been here almost 2 months now, and a lot of that is the work that we do really kind of lands on this customer life cycle. And the last component of that life cycle is the renewal life cycle, but it doesn't just happen at the end of the journey, right? Renewals happen when you're onboarding customers and implementing them. They happen while you're driving adoption with customers and helping them, meet their outcomes and the goals that they're trying to get out of your product. And so, even though my scope is a little bit more narrow, I think it's still as important, and I think about it as really kind of like, how do we collaborate and align all of the things that happen ahead of a renewal so that the renewals are easier. So I'm really excited to get kind of like a little bit deeper into that part of the customer journey and collaborate with sales ops and CS ops and all of the go-to-market leaders to really like have a huge impact here.
That's super cool. I love the fact that you transitioned from CS ops over to renewals. Like tell us a little bit more about what that transition looked like. Like, does the world on the other side look very similar to the world that you may have had? And does it, is there a lot of things that you were able to take from your old world to sort of lead you to this now, this shift down the journey, maybe, if you will?
Yeah. So I would say, I've kind of had this journey happen once before at OpenDNS. We were acquired by Cisco. And so as we kind of like wrapped our head around what like the integration with a much larger company would look like, I focused a lot on, integrating our Salesforce instance from a renewal perspective with the greater Cisco Salesforce instance, and how do we transfer data back and forth and then align processes. So I was very much in the weeds with renewals specifically as that journey happened with the acquisition. When prior to Ironclad, I went to Menlo, and as the leader of the CS Ops team there, we were responsible for um, really supporting all of the post-sale functions, which included renewals at Menlo. So I know in some cases, the renewals team can fall under sales, and sometimes it falls under CS. And in that case, I've been lucky where both of our renewals teams have always been on the CS side of the house. So I've always had like my hand in renewal operations and kind of like forecasting, making sure like data integrity was right and all of those things. And so it was really a natural progression for me to kind of like just jump back into this. At Menlo, I was really helping our renewals leader, run our forecasting process, ensure that we had good processes for risk mitigation and playbooks around that. And a lot of that same stuff I'm just doing here. Um, what I would say that I really like about it is that at this point, I can really focus on the activities and actions and strategies that are gonna drive a healthier GRR performance. I think, in CS Ops, sometimes our scope is so broad that we become generalists in a lot of ways where, we're driving little things here and there, but we don't have a chance to really get deep into the work. And I think like, um, there's always a desire to have a bigger impact, right? And I think like that's really what I was looking for here. Not so much, I love the rest of CS Ops. I love kind of figuring out how do we make our support team more efficient and effective and the customer experience better? How do our CSMs really align around driving value for our customers? How do we support advocacy and the enablement team? All of those things are really fun and important. But I think when we get to specialize a little bit, we kind of feel that impact much more strongly. And that's really kind of what's driven that decision to kind of move into this role.
I relate. It's like we need a process. The CSP needs work. The customer success platform needs work. Reports. I need a new export. I mean, it's like, oh man, where does it
All of
stop?
it. Just little things. Just little things
Mhm.
everywhere.
Yes, I might be reliving part of my day. So I will, and then I will let it go from there.
That doesn't go away. And I would say, like those curveballs, they're still coming my way. I think like as we try to figure out things and people are raising their hands on like what's not working, like still getting those. Yeah, the opportunity is really just to kind of focus on like a specific area. But um wherever we live in ops, I think like that's kind of like the nature of our roles, as supporting our internal stakeholders to deliver whatever their charter is.
Makes sense. I'm curious, like as you describe your function and your team, like do you have many people underneath you, or like what does the structure look like? That you
Yeah,
yeah.
right now, I have one person on my team. This person came over from the renewals team, responsible for helping to build the team. So they're very deep in the business. And one of the big things that we're doing is we're shifting our renewals ownership over from a renewals team to the sales team. And so there's been some adjustments there. I think like what that does is for our customers, hopefully, when we have large account teams and you have like an SE and an AE, a CSM, and somebody in professional services and all of a renewals manager, there's a lot of people. Who does the customer reach out to? Who do they engage with to drive the relationship forward? And we're hoping that that kind of simplifies that a little bit for our customers, drives some efficiency, drives deeper relationships with customers at pivotal moments. And so there's not a lot of need to like hand off as much information. There's still alignment needed between CS and sales, but I think like we kind of create some efficiency there with that. So, I'm really excited about that. Our team is small, but I think like where we get some mileage is that at Ironclad at least we have a dedicated systems team that's aligned with us. So we have resources there. We align with our BI team and our finance teams to help support us as extension of Renewal Ops. And then I have to be in lockstep with this move with our sales ops leader because he's regularly meeting with sales leadership on new business and on upsells. And so we have to kind of like figure out what's that right cadence so that like, we're not overwhelming both the leaders and the field with all of the things that we're trying to implement and change. And so what I would say is though my team is small, like the extended horizontal team is really large in helping us to execute against the things that we're trying to do.
A really
Right.
interesting perspective way to put it is like, oh, well, sometimes we're like, how many people do you lead or how many people are in your org? And but yet if you go horizontal and say, well, be only one person whose profile says I'm their manager, but here's still all the relationships I am tasked to manage with BI,
Yes.
with systems, with the actual stakeholders, with HR, we could list a bunch of departments that go along there.
Yeah, and that really applies whether you're in CS ops or renewal ops or anything else, right? Like you have to kind of figure out as a team how to like execute and align with everyone that's there. And so I don't think that that really changes. And in fact, you said something that reminded me of what my previous CCO would always say is that like customer success is everyone in the business's responsibility, not just the folks with the title. Like product has to drive customer success and sales and marketing and everyone has some ownership in that. And I would argue that the same is with renewals. We all have to make sure that the product works well enough so that there's less friction and the customers find value and want to renew. Marketing, we have to figure out how to engage existing customers in the right content, in the right activities and events so that we drive stronger champions within our customer base. And all of those things like really connected. And so when we think, yeah, we do have um, charters, we have responsibilities, but as a SaaS business with recurring revenue, customer success and renewals belong to everybody in some fashion.
I love that. That's you've got the right motion and you've got the right strategy there because I think, you hit the nail on the head. Like it's not a one function where you start renewals 60 days, 90 days out. Like renewals start right at the purchase. Like there's
Yeah.
the things that you plant along the way that hopefully lead you up to that renewal and the successful, maybe an expansion or some kind of upsell. And so I really like how you're thinking about that. Do you guys meet on a regular basis around the customer journey? Like when you talk about the horizontal layers or that
Mhm.
horizontal connection, sorry, do you guys have a bit of a rhythm where you guys stay connected or stay in touch on how you're improving the customer journey?
Yeah, so I would say the good thing and we're seeing a lot of this maybe more in the startup space. I can't speak for other areas, but like CS and sales and marketing is now rolling up into a single CRO versus having like a CCO report to the CEO and a CMO report to the CEO. I think that that transition creates better alignment across all of the go-to-market organizations. And so, particularly, I report to a VP of go-to-market operations. And so my team meeting regularly is with all, sales ops and CS ops and marketing ops and systems. And so we have that really tight alignment in cadence. And we do talk about what that means for the customer journey and how we make sure that we're all driving the same thing. And I think, I've been in organizations and where I did report to the CCO who reported up directly to the CEO. And I like that too. I felt like, there was a strong customer advocacy at the C-suite level. And I think like every company has to decide what the right thing is for themselves. But I think as a lot of times we get stuck in this place where we talk about the customer journey, and really we're just talking about the post-sale customer journey, like what happens once it gets handed off to us and what are the things that we do. And what I've experienced in some of my past roles is that um, then we don't always have the alignment. Sales ops might be making changes in the system to like territories values, or they might be changing the way that they track contacts and contact roles during the sales process. And if that integration doesn't happen across all of the go-to-market teams, then we've had things like gainsight breaking because we weren't pulling the same values and our reporting was off from how sales was reporting things and all of those things. And so I really look at this as an opportunity to have that like closer, tighter alignment across everything as we make decisions on how we move forward.
I heard someone describe it recently as like we can get into systems thinking. We think about the business as a system. It's not that those problems like that go away where like one hand's doing something the other isn't aware of, but you can usually get on top of it more quickly or
Mhm.
diagnose it or even prevent parts of it. If you're like, yeah, what happens in the sales funnel impacts what happens at the point of sale, impacts what happens in the post sale, impacts what happens at the renewal. So that systems thinking goes a long way.
Yeah, 100%. I think like um it's a machine, and you're right. It doesn't solve it just by reporting into the same org. I would say a lot of it has to be an agreement within the folks on how you choose to align to move forward. So I would argue it's not as much of like how the organization hierarchy is created and all of that. You can still have that alignment and report into the CCO versus the VP of go-to-market operations, but you have to work to drive that cadence. You have to work to drive that alignment to make sure that you all are talking. And I would even say, like, when we're thinking about building goals for the year and what are the things that we're going to work on, whether that's an OKR or a different type of framework, is looking for those opportunities to discuss those cross-functionally across go-to-market to make sure that like you understand what your counterparts are trying to address this year and you can align with that. So they're not slowing you down when you need to move forward and you're not slowing them down. So it doesn't matter where you sit. I think it matters like making sure that you're connecting.
Mhm. Super cool stuff. The I was gonna change a bit of a direction in terms of the topic, and some of the things you're talking about here is, yeah, like that horizontal glue, that alignment across those teams. I'm curious, like, all of this eventually, hopefully, all of it leads to like better retention, better adoption, hopefully some expansions along the way. Is there anything that you've learned along the way in the last, I think you mentioned it was 8 years or so that you've been doing this? Is there anything like any best practices or things that you think have really helped in terms of driving retention or expansions?
Hmm.
Some of it you touched on was like start super early and make it part of the fabric of the customer journey. But anything else that you could touch on that you think is a good best practice that everyone should be deploying or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when I'm thinking about this, it's how do you get sales and CS closer aligned? Because the biggest thing that I dislike, and I bet a lot of like revenue leaders dislike, are being blindsided by risk that we had not like known about, like our forecast being affected or something happening. And I would say like how do you get ahead of that? You have to make sure in some ways as you grow, and this means different things for companies at different sizes, but if you can make sure that your CSMs have some alignment with the sales, the AE, um, at scale, so that they're not having to have 100 different meetings with 100 different AEs. And if you can get that territory alignment, I think that that is the best practice to drive account planning, to get people talking on a regular cadence to discuss risk, to discuss growth opportunities, like are we finding CSQLs? Um, all of those things, I think like if you can define that in a better way, but then I would say do actual account planning. I think that that's something that gets missed. Like we're not talking to each other. We're worried about like maybe productivity goals and building pipeline and all of those things, and we forget to talk to each other about like what our plan is to help our customer achieve their outcomes, what our plan is to customer has a new leader, and our champion has left. All of those things, we need to not run playbooks in isolation, but really talking together, like who's on point, who should be running this, what is our plan to get right with the customer, and those things only happen when people are talking together internally.
I
Couldn't
like that.
agree more. And what the piece of that that resonated for me is have a plan. And sometimes plans don't always go as planned. But at least if you have a plan versus, whoa, our customer just got acquired and none of us know what to do now. So we're just gonna kind of bumble around into each other until somebody's plan rises to the surface. They're like, oh, if you have that plan, okay, now we at least know kind of what to do for now, and we can tweak as we go, but we know where to start.
Yeah, it's easier to pivot, right? Because you have a starting point and you can adjust and adapt versus starting from nothing and trying to like figure out like,
Yeah.
our heads explode because we're just trying to like wrap ourselves around the problem.
Speaking of plans, I'm gonna ask you a different sort of question. Now, you mentioned you've been at Ironclad for 2 months and you were elsewhere previous to that. There are a lot of folks who in CS ops in any career really, but who are moving from company to company. Um, Hopefully it's planned. Sometimes it's not, right? But
Yeah.
talk to us about how you exited or
Mm,
how you entered. And unless you don't need to spill all the dirty laundry on, oh, this is why I left or whatever. That's not what I'm going for. It's more like when you know there's going to be a transition that you're making in your career.
mhm.
Great things you need to do as you're exiting, and what are some great things you need to do as you're entering to get that start?
Yeah. I love this question. I really do because I feel like um I had a heavy responsibility as I left my last company. I think like there was a lot of change happening. But I also personally, sometimes we have to make the decision for ourselves. And that was where I was. And so, um, I built a team there. I was really happy with the team. I love them. I still stay in touch with them on a regular basis. And so it was important to me that they felt successful even after I had left. And so that looked like a lot of conversations with my HR business partner, with my leader, with my counterparts in operations, so that they understood fully my remit and the stuff that I focused on. And that conversation, they happened over a couple of months. I was lucky that my leadership team were really supportive of me kind of like looking and evaluating my career. And we were able to really build something. And some folks aren't as lucky to have that runway. I think I was incredibly blessed to be able to do that. And I also think what kind of came out of that was something like a 20-page transition doc with like who were on my team, what are their skill sets? What is their primary responsibility in the activities that they're responsible for delivering on a regular basis? And then what are the things that I owned outside of that that helped to drive CS and CS ops forward? Um, it was comprehensive. I also listed all of the projects that we had worked on, what the status was on, what was the next step, so that there was clear ownership and guidance as we moved forward, because I didn't want something to drop the ball just because I had left. And then I even included some notes on like some backlog items, and I typically wouldn't do this, but there were some really important things that I felt like needed to be prioritized, especially as our fiscal year was changing over at the same time that I was leaving. I think like I wanted folks to know that these were things that I was thinking about and how we scale all of that. It really came down to making sure that the team that I was leaving was set up for success, but also, working in the startup space, I'm a stakeholder. I have a lot of at stake with the success of that company after I'm long gone. And so I want to make sure that um, everyone knows exactly what we needed to do to continue to drive the business forward. And I think like as you grow as a leader, those are the things that you start to think about. Maybe as if I was an individual contributor, I probably had not put that much effort into it, but thinking about like the responsibility that was on my shoulders at that point, it was really important for me to leave in that way.
And
So
maybe
I said a lot, and I would say coming to a new company was a little bit easier. Um, I was lucky that the timing of that was like 1 week. I started a week before our company kickoff. So it was good and bad, because it was a little overwhelming, but what I was really excited about was I caught the spirit of the company. Um, I got to see our CEO and our co-founder on the stage talking about, what were our strategies and our big rocks were for this year. I got to hear about like product innovation. We had customers come and talk about why they love to use our product. And so it was really kind of like foundational in that way. And also breaking down, the meeting so many people in person barrier, like at least I could shake people's hands. They get to know who I am. And so when I reach out on Slack afterwards, it's a little bit easier to like start those conversations. But I would say it was emotionally draining, meeting 500 colleagues for the first time after I had just started. So, um,
We should get your best tips on that too. How to survive SKO in your second week.
yeah,
That would be a fascinating topic,
take lots of breaks for sure.
especially if you're an introvert.
Yeah, yeah. I found myself going and finding quiet corners every once in a while for sure.
is there anything that you focus on like in your first year? So you're in your 60 days or so. Like,
Mhm.
do you look at it like, what do you want to achieve in your first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
Yeah, I definitely did, but a lot of that was kind of like preordained with some of the decisions that were made before I got here. And so, primarily, like on a personal level, my goal was to kind of understand process, to understand data, and to understand the product. I think like those things, if I could like wrap my head around it, understand our selling motion, our upsell motion, why customers churn, understand kind of like how people actually click through to get a renewal done, and all of those things. And then like how accurate is the data? Where do we need to like
Yeah.
um, dial in that part of it was really important to me. Um, those things are absolutely the things that I focused on the first 30 days, but we're kind of in the motion of kind of like switching renewals ownership. And so right now I'm just jumping right into enablement, making sure that the teams that are taking over are equipped to actually pick up the ball and keep it running without impacting our GRR performance and all of those things. And so um, like I said, a lot of it was already in motion, and it was just really up to me to kind of like understand it, sign off on some things, and then make sure that we keep moving forward.
I love that you've said like product as well, and I'm sure you started to get to know some of the customers. Like, I think anyone in go-to-market should be like that should be their first week. Like, get to know the product, get to know the customers, blast through it as fast as you can. So at least you get a good reference of what this whole thing is all about and why it's so important that these workflows work so well, or that it improves, the customer journey. So yeah, I love that you mentioned that. It's super cool.
Yeah, I just, when you understand how the product works and feature parity, especially the startup world, right? We're changing price lists every couple of years, trying to figure out like what is the best, like what's going to resonate in the market, what are people are likely to pay, and get the most out of that relationship. I think like you have to understand kind of like what the features that were packaged early on and how that's changed. And honestly, how do we get folks onto the newer packages? Because after a while, that becomes an operational burden having folks on different packages over the years. And so all of those things have been top of mind, and understanding the product is critical to be able to like execute on any of that.
And I think like I know in some of the larger companies that I've worked with, like consolidation of contracts, making sure that there's one renewal instead of like 15 across the year or something for a single customer. And then the other part, like I think you kind of slightly touched on it as well, like the automation side of things, like
Mhm.
how far can we process a transaction without ever having a human get involved? Like, can we start sending purchase orders, or can we send out invoices automatically, or does that require? Are these some of the kind of? Is this? I assume these are some of the top topics that you see as well in your world.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think that's like very similar to CS ops, right? We're thinking like, how do we leverage our tools and data as much as possible so that our teams are focusing on the important conversations, right? Like we want our CSMs having the right conversations and not so busy in the systems updating things as much as possible. Now, we're never going to get completely away from it, but we want to kind of like get it to the best place possible. And it's the same thing for renewals. I'm thinking a lot about like, how do we simplify the system so that the AEs really are just thinking about like, how do I drive this renewal? How do I drive this conversation? But even more long term is like, how do we enable self-service for renewals, especially as we think about the long tail of the business and all of that? Like, how do we like embed that into the product so customers know when their contracts due, they know what's going to be charged to them, they can update their credit card if they want, and we don't have to do that. So that's kind of like my vision for our future. It's nothing new, it's not rocket science, but I think it's really going to drive like our effectiveness and scale.
And it's not, I totally agree. It's not rocket science, but it's not that every company out the gate has all that in it. And so
No, not at
sometimes
all.
it's the way that how you deliver that and how do you get there, is so critical. So that's super cool.
And
Is
it
there,
takes a lot of alignment with like product and different people. It's not just like go to market doing these things. We have to kind of like work across the business to drive those changes.
yeah. Do you any predictions for the future of renewals and the space? Like, do you guys leverage AI or anything else that's happening
Yeah,
in
I think that that's something everyone is thinking about is like, how do we leverage insights, especially as we think about like customer health and, how certain signals correlate to the likelihood to renew. So we want to think like, how do we kind of like combine all of that knowledge and use some type of machine learning or AI to drive that for us so that like our out forecasting is a little bit more close to the pin than kind of the wide swipes that we take early on. I would also say the unique thing is, Ironclad is a contract lifecycle management tool. And so how the exciting thing is how do we use our own software to deliver renewals for our customers? So that's kind of like, an exciting opportunity for us to really take and optimize.
In some ways, you are your own customer. They're
Yep,
sitting renewal ops on a contract management piece of software. Yeah, it all makes
exactly. Yeah.
Robert, it's been such a pleasure. I've learned so much and it's so great. I know you're in renewal ops and strategy, but you're in CS ops too. So it's been such a
Absolutely.
pleasure to visit with you and get all of your insights. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You all both, I enjoy every single time I talk to you. I also learn a lot from you both. So keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep tuning into the podcast and hearing the other great work that other CS Ops folks are doing.
That's awesome. Thanks again, Robert.
All right, thanks.